John Calvin had this to say about the human heart. All our hearts are idol factories. This is something that I think we need to take a close look at, because God will have the final say about every idol, and there is no doubt about that. Let's take a moment and read through Isaiah 2. Good morning, Faith Fellowship Church. As we look at Isaiah 2 this morning, it really is a powerful passage with much to say. First and foremost, Isaiah starts out talking about the surety of God's people being established in the ways of the Lord. This alone we could spend plenty of time on. It is God's intention always that his people know the depths of his law and his majesty. No eye has seen, no ear has heard what God has in store for his people. The sufferings of this world are no comparison to the glory that will be revealed in us. In these times of perceived uncertainty, we need to remember what things are uncertain and what things are not. Our way of life, our former way of life, that is so full of wealth and pleasures, where we are now having limitations imposed in different areas of our life, in itself has become uncertain. What is not uncertain is God's faithfulness to his people. What is not uncertain, that God has the power and sovereignty to deal with every situation that is going on right now. As God's people, we need to understand what his faithfulness looks like. It doesn't mean that God will be faithful to leave us alone to have a life here on earth that is full of pleasures according to the flesh. It doesn't mean that life is going to be awesome all the time without any problems. This is a false teaching known as prosperity teaching. What it does mean is that he is faithful to see his people that will walk in his ways. It has always been his intention to establish his people above the nations, as the New Testament tells us that his people will judge the nations, as we also see here at the beginning of Isaiah 2. We also see that God actually appears to abandon his people for a time because of the gross amounts of idols that his people are worshiping. He laments the superstitions and the pagan divinations from other countries and from other gods. Isaiah further laments the massive amounts of treasures that the Lord's people possess and worship. He continues to lament their worship of idols that they have made with their own hands. And if there is one thing we know about God, is that he will never share his glory. As it says in verse 11, the eyes of the arrogant will be humbled, and human pride will be brought low. The Lord alone will be exalted. Isaiah then goes on to share about this day of the Lord that will take place, where all that is exalted will be brought low. All that is lofty will be humbled. All the great ships of the sea, all the great towers built by man, all the treasures of the land, all the collections of horses and chariots, everything that is exalted against the Lord our God will be brought low. The presence of God will cause enormous amounts of fear to those that are full of pride. The proud will flee to caves and hide themselves from the terrifying majesty of God. They will cast their idols out. They will see how utterly worthless all of their accumulated wealth actually is. I think if God's people would open their eyes to look around them, they would actually see that God is doing this as we speak. We may not like the way things are going in America, but I think that God is dealing very clearly with so many of the idols that we have established with our own hands. We need to be aware of the things that God has given us and allowed us to enjoy. And if we exalt any of those things against God, we will be dealt with. God will deal with it, because it is God alone that is to be exalted. God's command to his people is to stop regarding man as anyone who is to be exalted. It is God that put breath in man. That man is a nobody. So as we look at the word this morning, may God deal with anything in our life that exalts itself against him. May we humble ourselves to see that everything we have is from his hand. May we inquire of the Lord to see what we have exalted in our own life as all important, above God. May we humbly repent of those things that God may teach us to be content no matter whatever the circumstance that we find ourselves in. As Paul said, we have to learn to be content. The Lord will recognize God's people as different by their love and their dependence on the Lord alone. May we say with Job, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.